Bonita's Kitchen, and thank you for joining us. What I'm going to be making for you today is traditional Newfoundland moose soup. So before we get started, I'll just talk a little bit about the roast of moose that I got here. I marinated it overnight. You don't necessarily have to, but this is the way my dad would do it years ago. He would always put the moose roast into a bowl of beef broth or just a mixture of different ingredients. What I got here is onion cut up in slices, some rosemary, salt, pepper, and a little bit of onion powder. So pretty much just to get it browned a little bit so that the next day when you go to make your soup, you can cut it up in little chunks and it will flavor it really good before you fry it. I've had tons of requests for more soups, and I thought that this was a good time to do this one. And also in this soup we're going to have salt beef. And salt beef, I got a recipe on Bonita's Kitchen how to make your own salt beef if you don't have access to it. And basically soak that overnight as well, get some of the salt off, because we don't need all of that on there. And if you don't have salt beef and you don't have time to make some and wait for those weeks to go by, you can just use a sea salt when you're making this soup. And of course you don't even have to have sea salt. You can omit that. I'm using fat pork. It's just the fat belly of the pig that's salted. I'm going to cut that up in little cubes. We're going to start that frying before we put our cubes of moose in there, because I want that to fry with it. That was the way they did it years ago. We're going to be using root vegetables, parsnip, turnip, and carrot. I'm going to be using some celery, and of course we can't have soup without onion. In this soup as well, you got an option. I'm going to be using barley for my choice of extra, and you could use rice. Rice was what they used years ago, but for some reason I do like that texture of barley with any sort of beef, and this is nice with the moose roast. So let's get started on this. I want to cut up my moose into little cubes. So basically you'll need a nice sharp knife so that you can cut down through your roast. So if you don't cut all the meat off the bone, that's fine, because we're going to be using this as well in our soup. We're going to put that right into the broth. Basically you're going to cut it until it gets into little small chunks like this. I guess while I'm cutting up my moose meat, I'm going to ask you a quick question, and then you can send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had moose soup? And how did you make your moose soup? Did you brine it overnight? Did you fry it before you put it in the pot of water? Let me know. I'd love to know. So I'm almost at the end of chopping up our moose meat into little cubes. And believe it or not, even though this looks like a lot, when you start frying this down and then you got to cook it, it will shrink a little tiny bit, so there's not going to look that much. And it's nice to have lots of moose meat in your soup, because that's exactly what we're having. We're having moose soup. So in my recipe, I'll just say 2 to 3 cups of chopped moose meat. But I'm going to let you gauge what you want. You can have less, you can have more. What I got here is 8 cups of vegetable broth. I want to start this boiling in my boiler. You can do anywhere from 8 to 10 cups of vegetable broth, beef broth, whatever you got on hand. And if you don't have beef broth and that you've purchased, you can make your own just by putting in a lot of root vegetables into your boiler, cutting it out in chunks, boiling it with some onions, salt and pepper, and letting it go for maybe 2 or 3 hours. Let it cool down, and then you can just keep it in your fridge for up to a week. And so I'm going to get this boiling on that, and I'm going to start cutting up my fat pork and my salt beef. So just cut your fat pork up into small chunks. And for those of you that don't have access to fat pork, don't be alarmed. This is the way they did it years ago, because moose meat really got no fat in it. You need some other substance, either pork or beef or from, or just fat pork from pig that you would use, because it helps give that flavor. So right now I'm going to use I'd say about a quarter of a cup. And I'm going to put that right into my frying pan, and then I'm going to start the frying on that. So then back to the salt beef. For those of you that don't know what salt beef is, or you don't have access to salt beef, don't be alarmed, because this again is an old traditional meat that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians would use to help cook their meals, either a jig's dinner or soup, stews. It always put that flavor on it. So if you don't have it, you don't have to. And anyone that got any dietary conditions that you can't have salt at all, don't worry about that, because you can flavor your pot with just herbs of your choice, of course, thyme and oregano. So this is about the size, the same as the moose meat. Continue doing that. So like I was saying at the beginning, this salt beef was soaked overnight into some cold water. You can keep it in your fridge, the same as you did with your moose meat brining, but you're going to get this in some fresh water. And then you don't have to boil it twice when you're putting it in your soup, because you've taken off a lot of the salt, and the little bit that's left on it is going to flavor your pot. So what I'm going to do now is put this directly into my boiler of vegetable broth that I just put on there, and that's between 8 and 10 cups, and get this boiling. And I'm also going to put in the bone that I got there, because that got flavor, and the same thing with the bone of the moose meat. So I'm going to do that. So I'm just going to dump that on in there, put my board back there, and put the lid back on. Okay, so now I need another clean board or slate for my vegetables. This is frying up nice. What I'm going to do now, because I got it reaming there a little bit, I'm going to be adding my moose meat in there now and get that frying a little bit before I start cutting up my vegetables. So as you can see, the fat pork is coming along lovely there. It's turning into little small scrunchions, and that's what we would call it here in Newfoundland. If you don't have fat pork, you could use oil of choice, vegetable oil, olive oil, and then what you can do is just with about 2 tablespoonfuls. So you just put the moose meat on in there to start to fry. So I'm going to take this nice chunk of moose, the bone, and I'm going to put it directly in the pot now with the salt beef and the broth, because I don't need to fry that. I'll just put that right on in there to get it cooking. Okay, so I just need to dry my hands there now, washed up from handling that meat. So we're going to be putting some, even though I had this marinating and seasonings and whatnot, you should equally season each time, each layer. Not necessarily using salt, that's optional for anyone. But I'm going to use a nice helping of freshly grated pepper. I am going to be using sea salt in this, but you could omit if you can't have it for dietary reasons. I'm going to be putting in some fresh or grated thyme. I want that to cook in there, because any time that you, as a play on words, you cook thyme, you bring out all of those flavors and essential oils that's in it. And I got about a teaspoonful of onion powder. So put that right on in there. So let that fry up with your moose meat and your pork. So what's next on my agenda is, I don't want to knock my pot over, is cutting up the vegetables. So pretty much you got to peel and cut it into small little pieces. I'm not necessarily going to show you all of it, but I will show you the size of each one as we do it. So right now I'm just peeling the turnip, which is also called rutabaga. So pretty much after you've peeled your turnip, use a big knife, I guess, and you can just roll it back and forth onto the vegetable to cut it easily. You don't want to cut your fingers, of course, and just doing the same and only making little small pieces, the same as we did for the salt beef and the mousse. You don't want big chunks because this is soup, not stew. So after you finish cutting up your turnip, put it right into a bowl of cold water. And now we're going to get ready to cut up our carrot and our parsnip. This is a nice parsnip, and parsnip in soup is delicious. It's got this sweet taste that brings out the flavors in your soup. So if you haven't had it before and you're not certain what it is, it's a root vegetable. Check with your local market, grocery store, wherever you've got available, whatever you got available, and just ask them. It's white inside and it's got this nice smell. Okay, I just want to check on my mousse frying there. It's coming along nice. So always cut your vegetable in half first and then put the flat part down onto your board because you don't want to cut yourself. And that's very easily done. Then let your knife go through making the same cuts as we did for the turnip, and then turn it the other way and make small soup-sized bites like this. So that was one medium parsnip, two medium carrots, turnip. I got a couple of potatoes. Medium, I got 2 small onions, but a medium onion is fine. And soups takes a little bit of time. Years ago, this will be like almost like a day's job because you're cutting all the vegetables up. Sometimes they do it at night time and let it soak overnight. Or they'll make it for a party at the cabin. You know, they'll do a cabin party or a shed party, and they'll have a nice boiler of mousse soup or mousse stew, but right now we're doing mousse soup. So what I'm going to do now is cut up my onions and get them frying in with the mousse meat. It's starting to make my mouth drool because I'm smelling all those smells there, so forgive me if I'm drooling here. I usually don't peel onion when I'm working on the show because it makes me cry, but I wanted to show you, when you cut it and you cut it in half, leaving this little root on the bottom because it helps you from cutting yourself. And this way you can go this way into your onion and then go this way and it don't move, putting it on the flat and then cutting it into little pieces, and that's all you need. Okay, so now that I got the onion peeled, and I'm going to put it all into the mousse meat there now, and the fat pork that was frying. So I just cut off the ends and the tips of the celery. And I got 3 pieces here. You could use more. I actually love the taste of celery in any soup, and it really flavors it nice. So just cut it up in small cuts like this. So just peel your potatoes, and potatoes are starchy, so I always like to put potatoes in water to get some of the starch off. And again, you don't need to have potatoes in your soup if you don't like it. Like I said, I usually just put it in there because I do like that little starchy taste to my soup. It thickens it as well. And but I'm going to be using barley, so I'm going to have double in there. And again, you use your best judgment there on that, and just cut it in half. This soup is absolutely delicious, so you can't go wrong either way, whichever way you decide on making it. Just cutting it in slices first and then little chunks. Pretty much that's all the vegetables we're going to be using in this soup. I'm going to be using half a cup of pearl barley. Again, if you don't like pearl barley or barley in general, you could use whatever you like. You could use rice, you could use noodles, or nothing at all in that shapes. That's entirely up to you. My dad would like rice and my mom loves barley, so I'm going to use barley today because I know she's going to add some of this soup or a good taste of it. And we're using tomato soup, canned tomato soup, and that again flavors it, brings all these flavors together. This smells absolutely amazing, by the way. So I'm going to get back here, move it around to see how it's coming, and then we're going to get everything into the boiler. Just look how nice this looks. So this is pretty well ready for my boiler. We always say there's nothing like the pot boiling, and this boiler is doing that for us today. You can see this moose bone there with meat still on it, and the salt beef bone, of course. This one here, all the meat is starting to boil off of that, and trust me, there will be none of that left. Everything will be taken off those bones and enjoyed the same. So you just scoop all of your moose meat that you fried and the pork and onions right into your pot of vegetable broth with your already boiled salt beef. Okay, so what we're going to do at this stage, I'm just going to stir all of this around. Pretty much everything in there now is part cooked. We fried up the moose meat first. We boiled for a half an hour or more the salt beef and the rest of the moose meat off the bone. So what I'm going to do now is cover, let this start up to boil again for another half an hour. That'll give it an hour of full boiling. And then we're going to add in our vegetables, we're going to add in our barley and our tomato soup. So our soup is coming along lovely. This smells absolutely amazing in here. So what I'm going to do now, my boiler is still galloping on a medium heat. I'm going to be adding in the tomato soup, the barley and the vegetables, and let that continue boiling then for about another half an hour. And then after, if you're cooking this at home and you just want to listen to your pot boil, turn it down on simmer and just let it simmer until you're ready to have it with friends, family, it doesn't matter. You're going to be a winner with this meal. So let's just get adding this in here. This is coming along lovely, and just look at how nice it's boiling together. You see the salt beef and the moose meat. So what I'm going to do now is pour in a cup of tomato soup that's been diluted a little tiny bit with some water, the full half a cup of pearl barleys. And if you don't want to use pearl barley, you could use rice, but that would have to be the very last of your bowl because rice is quicker than pearl barleys. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to bring up nice helpings of my vegetables and put right into the pot. Now just look at this. This is so delicious, and I'm going to tell you, you're going to have lots of soup, and if you don't eat it all in one night, you can bottle it and have it for when you want it, like that. Okay, so I'm just going to stir all of this around. I'm going to have a little tiny sip. Oh my, delicious. And you can't, like, having the salt beef soaked overnight really helps, because then you don't have to double boil, because usually when you do make Jig's dinner you got to double boil your salt beef. Now you're going to put this the cover back on, let it simmer for about an half an hour or as long as you want. Like, you can have it, you know, for longer, but it's on a medium heat for a half an hour, and then turn it down on simmer, and then enjoy your soup. So meet me back here when it's cooked, and I'll take up a nice bowl to show you. Welcome back to Bonita's Kitchen, and thank you for joining us. Our moose soup is boiled. I got it galloping there. All we're missing here now is a few old-fashioned jigs to get ready for a shed party or a cabin party. I know the boys would like this down at the cabin if they had it, that's for sure, this moose soup. I don't know, they might have to fight my mom down for this one because she's waiting. So as you can see, cooked and absolutely delicious. Just look how delicious. So I'm going to take up a nice bowl there now, and I'm going to keep her on simmer and just let it boil a little bit longer, but I want to show you how nice it is. So now I'm just going to scoop up a nice helping, and I'm going to get some of that juice. I got some homemade bread there, and my favorite part of the homemade bread is the first piece or the last piece, because that's really nice for dipping into soups or stews. There you go. I think I might take one of those salt beef bones. There you go. That's what that looks like. Absolutely delicious. So all I need now is a little tiny bit of green onion on mine. So what I've been doing, and you probably have seen it in many of my tapings now, is buy fresh green onion, and I just keep it in a dish or a little cup or glass, and just keep adding fresh water to it, and it stay like that until you use it. It actually keeps growing. So what I'm going to do now is have a taste of my soup and a little bit of my bread dipped in it. I'm going to take some of my bread. Absolutely delicious. So as you can see, this is how quick and easy it is to make moose soup. And again, making that meat tenderized and frying it, to me, is always the way to go, no matter if you're doing cooking with moose or beef. But moose is a game meat which has always got that strong taste, but doing it this way, I can guarantee you will enjoy it. So to get more traditional and non-traditional Newfoundland meals, you can visit me on YouTube, and up at the top right hand corner is a subscribe button. Just hit the link and it will prompt you to what you need to do. And each time I post a new video, you will get a notification. You can also visit me on my Facebook page, send me a message on www.bonitaskitchen.com, and don't forget to answer that question. What is your favorite moose soup and how you cooked it? And also, you can send me a tweet on Twitter. This ends this episode of Bonita's Kitchen. We are going to get into our moose soup there now to get that while it's piping hot. So from my kitchen to yours, you have a wonderful day.